Hi, it's Kim McGrath again for another installment of Eclipse season. And if you haven't seen it, I just did tarot cards and moonology cards for all zodiac signs. To wrap up Eclipse season, I used the Avian Tarot deck and Moonology Tarot deck. I will drop the link down in here. I decided at the end of the card reading that I would make a separate video for the astrology for all of us. I appreciate shorter videos, makes it easier to listen to and watch. So I hope you enjoy that as well. And I will reiterate some of the information that I talked about. So this installment is for the astrology for the second half of September. We have a solar eclipse coming up in Virgo at 29 degrees and 5 seconds. That is the anaretic degree. It is the crisis degree. Virgo is all about our overall health, body, mind, and spirit, most of all, our mental health. It's our daily habits, our daily routines. It is our small animals. And it's, often the work that we do day to day. The Sabian symbol for that 29 degree is about distraction. And I think we have a lot of that going on in the world. I will hopefully be able to hone in directly on that Sabian symbol, like all the verbiage specifically. Let me see. Let me see. Sabian symbol. Let me see if I can get that. Did it come up? Did it? There we go. Okay. So the Sabian symbol for this eclipse, by the way, it's the hepatic duct in our digestive system. And it's about having an urgent task to complete. And a man doesn't look to any distractions. This is about not being distracted from anything that's going on around us. And I think that this world is so full of distractions right now. And I don't know what is really going on behind the scenes, but we are being distracted in so many directions that, like my guides told me, turn your phone off, turn your TV off, get back to what is real. And what is real for me is my family, my friends, reading good books, being out in nature, and just really enjoying my life without all the distractions. Now, it's counterintuitive to what I do because here I am on social media, right? But seriously, like I won't be offended. People needing to take breaks, I highly recommend it. Um, we've got to stop scrolling because we're being fed all these distractions all of the time, which leads me into how the moon and Mercury rules Virgo, play into our mental health. How does that show up in astrology? Um, and also, how can we prepare now by changing our habits, leading us into the holidays so that we don't have to try and undo it come the new year, right? Making some healthy changes to our daily routines and our habits so that, um, you know, we're not paying for it for the first 6 months of the new year, which is crazy because, like, I've been trying to change a lot of things in my life prior to Virgo season. You may have heard me talk about it in previous videos, but when women become a certain age, things in their bodies start to really change. And it creates chaos and havoc within us. And my weight was out of control. And I've always been very slim and energetic and active. And I had absolutely no energy. I felt like if I looked at food, I was putting weight on. I couldn't figure out what was happening. I knew that I was getting enough exercise. I thought that I was eating healthy. And after getting everything tested, my doctor said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. What are you eating? And he suggested that I start counting calories. And so, I use the free version of MyFitnessPal. And sure enough, I was eating probably 1 to 2, maybe 300 calories more almost each day than I was actually burning. So I wear the Fitbit to make sure that I'm getting enough sleep and enough exercise and doing the right thing. So anyway, long story short, trying to stay within those calorie constraints, which I wasn't super strict. I just wanted to eat a little bit less than I was actually burning. But it had me make changes in what I was eating because I wanted to eat as much food as I could for those amount of calories. One of the things that I did is, and I knew it wasn't good, I put water enhancing drops to give me flavored water, for like my dinner or whatever. So it felt like I was having a soda or something like that. Well, it turns out that I've had a migraine for about 2 weeks. And yesterday, my guides told me that it was those water enhancing drops and that I needed to read and research the label. And sure enough, and I don't know, the jury's out because I'm only like 24 hours into this. Um, there's an ingredient, artificial sweetener called sucralose, that apparently, if you are prone to migraines, which I am, it will trigger migraine. My dog Bailey is barking. It will trigger a migraine. Well, I've had a perpetual migraine for about 2 weeks now. And so I start drinking, chugging water, which it felt like a dehydration headache, that migraine. And so I have been drinking a lot of water. It just never felt like enough. And yeah, so I need to let this process out of my body. I need to stop it. But it's been 24 hours and my headache has gone away. Lo and behold, I talked to my daughter about it this morning, and she said, yeah, it's an allergic reaction to sucralose. I have the same problem. I had gone to so many doctors trying to figure out how to get rid of my headache, and I couldn't get rid of my headache. And that's what they discovered. And I said, how do you know this? You're my child. Well, she's my adult child with her own child. Um, I don't know if I was just so busy in my own life. I thought that her headaches were because she was pregnant and then she gave birth. Like I thought it was a hormonal thing. And it turns out that her doctor, who is my doctor, said that she has a sucralose allergy. He's thinking the same thing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But that just goes to show what we put in our body can have real mal effects on us. And I knew that there were chemicals in that, and I knew it wasn't good for me. So I have switched to just putting lemon in my water, and it's really good and refreshing. Um, I was also doing the water drops because if I would get together with friends, it was like I had a cocktail without having an alcoholic cocktail, and it felt special, but apparently maybe this is what that is. But since I have started counting calories, I have lost a pretty good amount of weight, but I'm sleeping better. I feel like I look better. My sinuses are not as messed up. When I do have a sweet treat, my sinuses inflame almost instantly. Um, we have to be really mindful of the things that we put in our body. Virgo rules the digestive system. Oh, I've got kitties under. under the table. Virgo rules the digestive system. Pisces rules the immune and lymphatic system. And it's all tied into each other, but also our gut health also affects our mental health. And I'm going to show you and talk about that in the astrology. Let me just give you the little horoscope for the week of September 15th through the 21st. And then I'll also do the following week as we're going into that. So the weekend outlook, like this seems like a pretty good week. We could have the wool pulled over our eyes this week from what this is saying, because we have a lot of Neptune at play right now, especially Mercury and Neptune kind of blanks us out. We're not thinking clearly. And it's interesting because I'm reading this from Llewellyn's Daily Planetary Guide, and they do break down each week. And it says, if someone tries to sell you swampland down in Florida midweek, you should take time out to reflect on the offer because you could be easily deluded into making wrong choices about your long-term stability. Luckily, you won't have to wait long to come to conclusion because Friday's aspect guarantees razor sharp decision making. So you don't want to make any bad decisions, especially financial this week. The weekend outlook says lovers' spats could spark, so you may want to hold off on having those, heart-to-heart talks with your loved ones. And also, it says couples, couples should lay low. Singles, you may want to put off dates for this weekend, especially with the eclipse coming. The day of reckoning for any poor choices made over the past few years may finally arrive on Sunday's solar eclipse when you find out if your idealism stands up to the test of reality. Tips for a 5-star week. Don't feel pressured into making on-the-spot decisions on Wednesday or Thursday, no matter how sweet the offer. And then for the week of September 22nd to the 28th, it says, even though summertime temperatures are starting to cool with the arrival of the fall equinox on Monday, things will be toasty warm in the bedroom when lusty Mars moves into the sign of carnal desire, Scorpio. Not happening for me. I'm single. I'm painfully single, but happily single. On the same day where it will remain until early November. On Tuesday, it may be difficult to know where to start due to an abundance of work, but thankfully, electrifying good times await you in the evening. So make sure to schedule a get together with your friends or your family, like, the people that you love the most. Power struggles, fights, drama may overload Wednesday with a relatively rare square between aggressive Mars and domineering Pluto. That could be pretty volatile, by the way, as well. Whenever we have hard aspects to from Mars and Pluto, there could be violence that's sparking. Ruffed feathers, people just being offended by our thoughts, words, actions, the things that are innocently maybe being said. The weekend outlook is a mellow weekend next weekend. Saturday is a perfect day for lounging, while Sunday favors intellectual pursuits and curling up with a good book. We do have some planets moving this coming week. So let me start off with Mercury will be moving into Libra on September 18th. Venus will be entering Virgo on the 19th. Mars will be entering Scorpio on the 22nd. And the sun moves into Libra on the 22nd. Happy birthday, Libra. So a lot of shifts, a lot of changes, a lot of things are flux and up in the air. stuff to the side, and I'm going to share my screen. And I changed the color for the stars. You'll see that the color for the cards it's a different color so that it stands out. How do I want to do that? All right, as always, my disclaimer, especially because I will be talking about health in astrology. So this disclaimer is important that this content in this presentation is for entertainment, enjoyment, and folly. The program is for informational purposes only. Astrological readings represented in this presentation do not constitute, do not replace, and should not be construed as financial, legal, medical, psychiatric, psychological, or any type of other professional advice on any subject matter. If you require such advice, please consult a licensed professional. And since this profession technically is not licensed, there are certifications which I have. I'll just leave that at that because I am highly qualified and certified. All right, so we have our eclipses. We've already had the first total lunar eclipse on September 8th in at 15 degrees of Pisces. Coming up, we have, what do you want? These cats, these kittens. Upcoming solar eclipse. It's only a partial. Coming on September 21st at 29 degrees 5 seconds of Virgo. 5 minutes of Virgo. 29 is considered the anaretic degree or the crisis degree. It's when the culmination of all the energy in that sign comes together to. And here we have the chart for the partial eclipse. And you can see, look at the chaos in there. Compare that to the equinox, which is much more calmed down. But what I'm seeing here, first of all, is the sun and the moon. Actually, oh, because I'm in a presentation mode, I can't draw. I was going to draw around these things. The sun and the moon, maybe I can. Please, lady. Rosie, you cannot be coming up onto the laptop. This is the stuff that I'm dealing with these cats. Sorry, and I apologize. I'm going to draw just to point out these spots for you. He wants to come over here, and there really just isn't any room for her. This is the chaos I'm talking about. He's so cute. He is very cute. Making a mess of everything. Okay. Don't know. I don't know if the thing is going to draw. I'm gonna just let that go for now. Maybe 10. Welcome to my world. Maybe it won't draw because I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, I'm thinking it's not. Apologies, let's just move on. So we have the sun and the moon in Virgo at 29:05. It's in the 9th house. It is conjunct Mercury, even though Mercury is already in Libra, it is still close enough to be considered, like a minor out of sign conjunction. What gets me is the opposition to Saturn and Pluto with these nodes, and that is in the third house. And that's from where I live, probably to about halfway through the United States, and then the houses would shift a little bit, but just the energy itself. When we have the sun and the moon with Mercury, especially with an eclipse, it could very well trigger some mental health issues. So when we're looking in the chart, we do look to the moon because that does represent our emotions. It also represents the mother as a whole and the effect that the mother in our home life could have had on us that plays out later in life with our mental health. At the same time, the sun represents the father or the male figure in our lives. So when we're looking at the moon in our chart, looking for the paragraph that talks about that. All right. So when there is a hard aspect from the moon to certain planets, and when I say hard aspect, I mean the conjunction, when the moon is, say, next to Mercury, when it is square, which is 90 degrees away, which would be represented by one of these shorter red lines, see the square there, or when it's in opposition. And also the quincunx, that's 150 degrees away or 5 signs away. Each section represents 30 degrees. So you've got your square at 90 degrees, opposition at 180 degrees, your quincunx at 150 degrees, and your conjunction is at 0 degrees. All right, so in theory, the moon is the universal significator for the family in general, as well as the mother in particular. However, in practice, more often than not, afflictions of the moon specifically denote problematic relationships with the mother, which then therefore plays out in our mental health. Now, interestingly enough, those traumas also show up in our gut health with digestive issues. So if you are suffering from some, major digestive issues, Crohn's disease, IBS, I can't think of all the acronyms now, but if you have it, it's probably stemming from a moon affliction in your chart that resulted in trauma with the mother. Okay, so they could also indicate that the mother had some overwhelming inner conflict within her own life that impacted her ability to be a stable parent. In general, the mother will take on the characteristics of the planet by which the moon is afflicted. So, for example, when I say affliction, we're talking square, conjunction, opposition, quincunx. So Moon Pluto would indicate a manipulative mother. Moon Neptune is the disappointing mother. Moon Uranus is the unreliable mother. Moon Saturn is the cold and strict mother. Moon Mars is the angry mother. And so the Moon Mercury could be a mother with a mental health issue. Moon Jupiter, there's no adverse connection there. And I'm trying to think, and Moon Venus, there would be no adverse connection there. So Venus and Jupiter are benefic planets. All the other planets would be difficult with the moon, depending. Now, the moon Chiron if you have difficult aspected, now, like in this situation, this moon is quincunx 150 degrees away from Chiron. So as a world, this is the chart that we're coming into for the eclipse. So that's why this paragraph is important, because think about this not only personally, but on a global scale. Okay, so um, after seeing Moon and Chiron over and over again, the author of this book feels confident to say that Moon Chiron can manifest as a traumatic relationship with the mother. The moon is the universal significator of the mother, while Chiron corresponds with unhealed psychological trauma. Thus, the moon Chiron often indicates an unchanging wound that exists between you and your mother. The mother may not have wanted children, yet may have had them anyway. A delineation, which is also possible for Moon Uranus, which I'll show you what a delineation looks like. With the Moon Chiron, the mother may have wanted a boy, yet had a girl, or vice versa. She may have wanted a girl, and and then had the boy. I already said that. The mother may have been severely mentally ill. The mother may have simply been cruel, emotionally abusive, and unfit for the role of motherhood. Any of these delineations would lead the native to a life of deep psychological trauma that may affect them well into their adulthood. When Moon Chiron does not correspond with any specific trauma, so say maybe you do have Moon Chiron in a difficult aspect in your chart, and you say, yeah, but you know what? I had the best mom. Everything was great. Then it will most often indicate trauma of the gut. And this is where those afflictions and diseases of the stomach and digestive system come from. Now, since we have a new moon, we also have the sun here. So I'll talk about that. And so similarly, the moon plays the role of the mother in your chart. The sun plays the role of the father in your chart. Instead of it being psychological and emotional, it's more of controlling and a self-worth type of thing. Let me just, so almost everything that can be said about the afflictions of the moon in relation to the mother can also be said regarding afflictions of the sun in relation to the father. Thus, Sun and Pluto corresponds with a controlling father, while Sun and Neptune denotes the disappointing father. Sun Uranus could suggest the unstable or absent father, whereas Sun Saturn can indicate that father who is so stable to the point of this manifesting as a crippling adherence to such a conservative worldview and lifestyle, very strict, that it hinders and inhibits you. Sun and Mars suggest possibly that your father was in the military, or it could be a very violent, well, military, law enforcement, etc., or somebody who was very violent and abusive. The Sun Chiron doesn't really have that same effect. It's not seen in the chart after very many testimonies. And so the afflictions of the sun to those planets for women will show up in how she chooses the men in her life. Okay, so they will have a similar flavor possibly. And then also too, for men, it could be the way that they treat women in their lives. So Now, with Mercury in the mind, there can be no discussion for mental health within astrology without discussing Mercury, the god of the mind. Um, and when Mercury is afflicted, this can signify a genuine affliction of one's mental health. Mercury Pluto corresponds with often unspeakable forms of psychological trauma. People who have this combination, so this would be Mercury to Pluto. So here in this case, Mercury is making a square to Pluto. So keep that in mind for this solar eclipse, that right now there's unspeakable forms of psychological trauma happening all over the world. People who have that combination, so you may have that in your chart, but think about, like, we're coming into this eclipse, which is chaos energy to begin with. And we have these aspects that this really got me thinking, because I was like doing a lot of research this week about this. And I feel that a lot of what is happening in the world is purposeful psychological trauma as a means to make everybody hate each other, to divide people. And there's like some kind of, what do they call it, like a psyop, a psychological operation at hand. And this is everywhere in the world. I could be wrong, but I don't really feel like I am, because what's happening in the world just isn't normal. It isn't right. So this Mercury Pluto makes total sense. All right, so people who have this combination sometimes have entire chapters of their lives that they cannot recall, owing to their subconscious mind from protecting them from those harmful memories. So a lot of times people that have amnesia will have Mercury, Pluto in their chart, and they won't even realize, like, maybe they are really struggling in their lives financially or in their careers or in their families, but Mercury Pluto has made them forget the trauma, so they don't even really know where that stems from. And then hypnosis and deeper psychological treatment could definitely help with that. Also, past life regression could definitely help with something like that. It denotes a brain fog. I think that's Neptune. Yeah, Mercury Neptune is the specific combination that denotes sleep. And so there's a fog over our minds and our thoughts and our words, and we can't get things out. So if we look, we have what do we have? We have an opposition from Mercury straight to Neptune. We also have it to Saturn. So sit tight, I'll talk about that. So that Mercury Neptune also suggests memory loss. It's as an actual medical symptom of some greater problems. Whereas, what are this? You can't see him. He's behind me, digging into my back. He's making biscuits on my back. I'm sorry. So Mercury Uranus does not exactly represent a mental illness. However, it represents scattered, somebody who's very scattered, disorganized. And we have a trine. So see the blue line going from Mercury to Uranus. Our thoughts are very scattered, disorganized. We can't make sense out of everything. That's not a particular mental illness, but we just can't get it together. And I think it's especially difficult because the sun is and moon are in Virgo, and that's where we're supposed to get organized, right? And moving on, Mercury Saturn, like the moon and Saturn, is one of the traditional combinations for melancholy, depression, um, And then finally, Mercury and Mars denotes a tendency towards angry thoughts that manifest as angry words and angry actions, sometimes leads to violence. So here we have Mars. They're both in the same sign, but they're not close enough to really have an impact right now. But Mercury is so much faster than Mars, and it will catch up to Mars. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I'm going to make a note of that, and then I could. Can I animate this and see when does Mercury conjunct Mars? We can go by the days. So you're going to keep an eye on right up here. We're going to watch for Mercury to move in close to Mars. Come on, Mercury, catch up. All right, so they're about 9 degrees apart. That's October 6th. 9 degrees apart. 9, I guess, are they not? I thought Mercury was much faster than that. Mercury will be getting ready to retrograde at this point. So they never fully get tight enough in a conjunction, but I would still expect that we could see, some a lot of angry words and possible angry actions. What else did I want to point out in this chart? I think that pretty much covered it until I get into the next section. So be mindful of the houses that these planets are in. So I don't think Pluto's really playing a huge, huge role, other than obviously that square. But you've got Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, Moon, Mars, little Uranus. Yeah, Mercury, Sun, Moon. All right, so when I talked about the delineation earlier, it says, oh, Moon, Mars doesn't really have any mental health issues, but if there's a delineation, part of that is when we look at how the planets show up in the sky with the celestial equator, some are below the equator, some are above the equator. When you're looking at it on the astrological wheel, it looks like planets are closer or further apart from each other. But when you're looking at them in the sky, you can see that, all right, well, we already know that the sun and the moon are conjunct each other, but one is above the celestial equator, the sun is above. That's where that plus sign comes in. And the moon is below the celestial equator. But we also have Neptune, Mercury, Saturn. The nodes are starting to get a little bit further apart, but they're all playing a role. And this is Eris, Mars's angry sister. Okay. Now, what's interesting, drink that. When I look at the delineation, you can also see that on this declination strip. I'm sorry. So here we have the sun above the celestial equator. Pretend this is the celestial equator, but it's like standing up straight instead of being horizontal. And you've got all these planets stacked up, like conjunct almost, or parallel to the sun. But when you look at them in the astrological chart, you don't see it like that. So just take a look. Like Here's Neptune, Saturn, right? Back. Well, here's Neptune and Saturn all the way down here. They're so far away from the sun and the moon. And Eris is all the way down here in the fourth house, not close to Saturn, Neptune, surely not close to Mercury, the sun, or the moon, right? Um, Yet in the declination, in the delineation, they're right there. They're all right there. And what is that saying to me? Well, I'm going to give you a little idea of, go back a little bit here. I think I was showing my animated software program, and I realized that I didn't share that with you. So I don't think you could see it when I was talking about it. So don't think you're crazy. I realize you probably can't see it. So anyway, Eris is named for, oh, I think I did print that. One back to my slide. I think I printed that in the next slide. Crazy. I did do a lot of prep on this. So Eris is named for the ancient Greek goddess of strife and discord. Eris seems to be a force for evolutionary movement, an agent of change, and then some. Eris moves incredibly slowly across the zodiac, but its movement in terms of influence on character and on events is fast, sometimes fast and furious. There is an impatience with this symbol, a sense of being driven to do something. What someone then does may or may not prove to be clever or useful, but at least Eris sees it that something is happening. Eris goads us forward, like it or not. Eris also goads us into situations that could be explosive. Um, So I did take out some of the other planets that weren't really in play, but for the eclipse chart and for the equinox, we've got the sun. Now I'm using this as how does it show up in your chart, but also how does it show up in the world on a mundane level. The sun represents the ego, self-awareness, personal power, creativity, vitality, and it reflects how one shines in the world and their core identity. Moon symbolizes our emotions, intuition, inner self, instincts, nurturing qualities. It indicates how a person feels and reacts emotionally. And remember, they're together with Eris, the reactionary. Then you've got Mercury, which governs communication, intellect, reasoning, and analytical skills. It influences how one processes information and interacts with others. Venus relates to love and beauty, relationships, pleasure, harmony, but also money. Did I say that? No, I didn't. Money. Mars represents energy, assertiveness, aggression, courage, and drive. Saturn governs discipline and responsibility and structure and limitations. Neptune symbolizes dreams, intuition, spirituality, idealism, and illusions. So then moving on, think about, oh, that's the equinox. We're not ready for the equinox yet. Oh, I thought that, I thought that I had put, oh, maybe I have to switch over to a different slide. All right, hold on. Sorry. Trying to be all profession stuff. Can't get my own act together. So when we're looking at the houses, you know, when I'm looking at from a mundane level, the first house representing the nation or nations as a whole. Then we go on to the national wealth, banks, stock exchanges, and telecommunications, transportation, news and media, then land, crops, natural resources, buildings, weather conditions, etc. Fifth house, we had Uranus in the fifth house covering the arts, entertainment, sports. Sixth house, that's general public health issues, epidemics, military matters, civil service. We have a lot of seventh, eighth, and ninth house activity for this eclipse. It's foreign affairs, international relations, death duties, taxes, and public mortality rates. So I would be very curious between now and February, March of really taking good care of your health, because there's a lot of indications that have been at play since I believe June of a possible new or enhanced epidemic. That ninth house governs shipping routes, both in the sea and the air, religion and churches, laws and courts, universities and education, laboratories and scientific research. So I think we're going to see and hear a lot about that. We have Mars in the 10th house, which signifies government institutions. So those are the highlights there. And I think I already took, oh, no, I didn't. So now I spoke about the planets. When it comes to personal matters, the sun represents leaders and authority figures. The moon is the general population, including women and children. Mercury is about communication, the media, and trade. Venus is women's health issues, artists, athletes, diplomats, all forms of entertainment, and definitely money. Mars represents men and military personnel, soldiers, firemen, law enforcement. Jupiter symbolizes judges, lawyers, priests. Now, I didn't see anything really happening with Jupiter, so we'll put that out. Saturn represents the elderly, as well as landowners and farmers. Saturn is associated with natural resources, but also signifies death and illness within populations. So that's really big at play with this eclipse. Keep that in mind. Uranus indicates anarchists, activists, and political dissidents, scientists and inventors. Neptune, which was very largely at play, represents collectivism movements such as socialism, communism, authoritarianism, along with mobs and gangs. Neptune is associated with illusions, delusions, which can manifest through fraud or escapist behavior like drug use, poison, floods, hurricanes. And then, of course, Pluto, we know, is making that square to Mercury, which signifies those who operate in hidden realms, such as detectives or spies. It encompasses themes of violence and exploitation, but also transformation through destruction, leading to renewal, major changes. So with Mercury making the square to Pluto, we could hear in the news of those types of themes. Mercury is making aspect to a lot of these planets, which would be announcements and news and media that I'm recommending everybody stay off of social media and their televisions unless it's for like fun entertainment pleasure. Back to, I think that was it that I had. Oh, I did have this in there. I knew that I did. Okay, so now I'm just gonna touch base real quick on the equinox. This is coming in the day after the solar eclipse, when the sun moves into Libra at 0 degrees, which you could see right up there. And what is on the angle? So why is it important for astrologers to look at the equinoxes and the solstices? Why is it important to look at the charts? Because we like to look at these angles, which is like the 9 o'clock, the 6 o'clock, the 3 o'clock, the 12 o'clock, those angles and the elements that they're in, not so much the sign. I mean, sometimes the sign, yes, but the element. So this is, I mean, not the element, the modality. These are all cardinal signs. Cardinal signs are the signs that get things going. They start like something, a new beginning. With it being in Capricorn, though, it's like, is it the start of us becoming very serious and very driven and very nose to the grindstone? Like, we're not willy-nilly anymore. It's time for us to like get serious about closing out the year, whether it's in our personal lives or in the world. You've got Aries on the cusp of the fourth house, which is the home. Does that indicate action or violence at home? Cancer on the cusp of the seventh is a lot of nurturing within your relationships. Libra on the cusp of the 10th, to me, says we need to bring harmony and balance into this world. And that's what I feel like is happening in this chart. Not only do we have a grand trine in air with the sun in Libra, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, there's that grand trine, but we have a kite formation, but the kite is upside down. So if you can look real closely, maybe turn your head upside down, here is the top of the kite, right? And then here's the bottom of the kite. I can't flip it around to show you, but I think you get an idea of what that means. So Uranus and Pluto are making an aspect directly to Saturn and Neptune. And then there's that opposition to the sun and that cusp of the 10th house. It's not going to be an easy time for any of us. Like, this is what we need. We need the harmony. We need the balance. We need the nurturing. We need to take action, especially in our own homes with our friends and family. And we're very serious. Maybe we just ignore it because we're so focused on other things happening, right? I don't know. Anywho, point out that we do have a yod here between Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, pointing straight up to Mars that has just entered Scorpio. And so this is restriction and confusion and chaos and violence. Unfortunately, it is not a hammer of Thor. It is a yod, which is called the finger of God. But all this uncertainty and all these rules or regulations and the chaos is pointing towards violence, when overall this equinox is calling for peace, fairness, balance, and harmony. I think that's all I have to say about that. We have, I gotta stop sharing. We've got a crazy couple weeks ahead of us, and it's like, hopefully it calms down with October. But I know from my financial reports, although the markets are doing fairly well, things are being assessed. Like, the end of the financial fiscal year is coming at the end of September on the 30th. And I know for me, for my day job, that's like when we're wrapping things up for the year and we're getting all of our audits and our reporting done and everything like that. So maybe we haven't really taken a good look at like, oh, what the books look like, for the year. And we're all coming off of the summer. So, we're still maybe in summer mode. And then once we start getting down to business, following September 30th and the close of the fiscal year, then we're like, oh no. And good possibility markets could change. And so historically, October is not really a great month for economies globally. So we'll have to see what happens there. Neptune will move retrograde back into Pisces mid-December. We could see some crazy weather related things. Saturn already retrograded back into Pisces. I think that's keeping things kind of a little bone dry with Neptune still in Aries. Yeah, so that's what I see. And I hope you like this video. I'll be back in about another week or two with some October forecasts, some stars and card. Be sure to check out cards for all zodiac signs that goes with this video that I posted separately so that I could keep these short. And I don't keep it short because I like to talk. I'm a Gemini. What do you want? Anyway, happy Equinox, which is Mabon, I believe. Yes, Mabon. Happy solar eclipse. Reminder, do not make moon water. Do not charge your crystals. I am of the school that we don't do ceremony during eclipses because it's chaos energy. The wishes that you put out there it's unpredictable how it's going to show back up. If you're willing to take that risk, if you have a full packed fifth house and you're willing to make that gamble, then go for it. But I wouldn't play around with that. As far as health is concerned, we have another almost 2 weeks left of Virgo season. Eat light, especially coming into the eclipse. Stay super hydrated. Think about changing one bad habit. Think about decluttering, preparing for the holidays so you don't have to undo everything that you did in the previous year. Until then, thank you for watching. Bye.